I was born in, 1935, born in the Rotunda Hospital, lived most of my life in Synod Place, number 7 Synod Place. That was home, an old Georgian house. And Dublin then was sort of in the 40s, 50s, it was fairly grey, a lot of tenements around, a lot of them being pulled down. Amazing, to see the colour in the walls, the red rattle that they painted their walls with, particularly up the stairs. And see the patterns of old wallpaper, stuff like that. But yet blue as well, and blue is my favourite colour. I would use blue quite a bit. Even if I was painting a city, I would use blue.
Your father was a painter of a different type, was he?
My father was a decorator. All his family were master decorators, but he also made some beautiful paintings, made some lovely portraits of us all. But my father made some very, very fine paintings. He died when I was quite young. He was electrocuted when I was 5, and something that will always live with me. We were all waiting for him to come home that evening. We were preparing for holidays here in Sligo. It was June 1941, and it was a shock. But my mother was wonderful. She kept the 6 of us together and worked in the sweep office to do that. And like a lot of other mothers, I mean, she met the great Sligo painter, Paddy Collins. She met his mother, and Paddy Collins' mother was in an awful state because Paddy was going to give up his permanent job. He worked for the Irish, for an insurance company. And when Mama came home and said to me, "That poor woman, she's really upset. Her son is giving up a permanent job," I said, "That's wonderful." She said, "Stop that." So eventually that's what happened to me. Just a week before we got married, I gave up. I was working in Palgrave Murphy's as a disbursements clerk. And to make a statement, I decided, well, this was it. But Sheila, my wife, stood behind me, and that was 1967. You made contact with your own. The first painter that I would have met was John Kelly. He lived over Mountjoy Square, and he worked in a very, very small. While he lived in an old Georgian house, there was the kitchenettes, and on each floor there was a kitchenette, and he used one of those as a studio. I used the kitchenette at the top of number 7 for a studio for a while.
You were in Dublin during the war years then?
Yes, yeah, the war years you had the shelters, the air raid shelters, and these big vats filled with water where in the summer some kids would swim in them. And the canal was a great place for swimming. I don't know whether those shelters would have worked, because it only took an iron ball, just one belt, and they all collapsed when they were knocking them down.
I heard when a child was conceived in those, someone was
I could well imagine. We used to play a trick. We'd put a wallet on the ground, particularly under a lamp, where somebody would see it, have a string on it, and we'd be hiding in the shelter, and somebody would come along and they'd look at it and they'd turn around, they'd look at see if there's anyone watching them, then they'd go down to lift it up and we'd pull the string. Of course, a couple of times we were caught, we got it right going over. Stink bombs were great, and you remember the films, making a stink bomb out of film and putting it into a letterbox, things like that. I actually enjoyed the city. I enjoyed city life and playing football in the street. And I remember we were caught, and it took 2 detectives to catch us. We were playing football in a lane in Gardner Street, and the nuns complained. And then a detective came in from each side. Imagine 2 detectives catching a young fellas playing football with a rag ball at that. But it was the racket we were kicking up, possibly.
So you spent a lot of time running around?
Yeah, of course, like all children, yeah.
Was the war kind of much of a factor, or was it just kind of out of sight, out of mind?
Oh, it certainly was. You had rationing. You had a lot of rationing. You had gas. Gas was turned off during the day. So you weren't allowed to use the gas, but people would take a chance. Otherwise, you'd have to, you had to cook on the open fire. You had to boil stuff on the open fire. But if people took a chance with the gas company had a lot of men who were called the glimmer man. and the glimmerman would come into the street, and the word would go up in the house that the glimmerman was in. Now, if he came in and if he felt that the gas was on, that you'd been using the gas, you were cut off. I mean, it was just cut off, and you didn't have any gas anymore. So, the cry would go up, and people would throw water in it just to cool it down. But then you had the gas collectors, and you see, in those days you had a meter, and it was a penny meter, and some people had a little key to open the meter. So they'd keep raiding the meter, and then when the collector came around, the thing was short, and it was a problem as well. But oh no, the war certainly was something else. Rationing, butter rationing, tea rationing. No, very little fruit. Oranges. When oranges came in, it was great. You know, oranges. We wouldn't have seen any oranges during the war. Bananas, when banana boats came in, it was exciting. So all of these things was it was all just part of a war. It has changed a lot. I mean, certainly O'Connell Street has changed. Our days, it was the milk bar. It was to a hop for 2 and 6. The Legion of Mary ran hops as well. There was a hop down in Lower Gardner Street called the Brew. That's actually where I met my wife Sheila, and that was amazing, because halfway through the dance, everyone would get down and say the rosary. So there was a mill for the door. You know, you had to get out, otherwise you were trapped in. You had to say the rosary. So you could imagine saying the rosary during a dance. But that was the time we lived in. And then you had the milk bars, and it was much slower, much slower. But we still enjoyed ourselves.